Welcome to our Board of Education meeting this evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act and is open to the media and public. Notices were duly posted and the meeting was advertised in the Courier News and tapped into. Effective March 1st, 2026, all legal notices and board meeting dates shall only be posted on the district website in conformity with state code. Formal action may be taken. Can we get a roll call vote?
Ms. Cassidy.
Here.
Ms. Fiore.
Here.
Mr. Lopes. Mrs. Menser. Mr. Pieros. Here. Mrs. Rad.
Here.
Mrs. Ryan.
Here.
Mrs. DePinto.
Here.
Mr. Rizzo.
Please rise for flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone, welcome. Before I turn it over to Dr. Hart and the superintendent's report, I just wanted to mention how the agenda flows. We have a lot of new people here may not have been to a board meeting before, so I was just going to review the agenda at a high level so you know what to expect over the next few hours. This meeting is going to be a little longer than usual because we're doing our budget presentations. So over the next, hour and a half, the administration will present to the board the budget. It's a great meeting for you to go to. It's one of our most important things that we do is the budget as a board and as administration. So it's going to be extremely informative, but a little long. From an agenda perspective, there are multiple items for the opportunity for the public to speak. The first one is going to be open comments from the public for anything on the agenda items that's an action item. So you'll see if you're here to speak on any of the policies or anything that's in the financial section or anything on a referendum, that's actually an action item we're voting on. So that'll be in the first public session. There's another one after we get through all the things that we vote on, action items, where it's open to anything on or off the agenda. That's just how the meeting's going to flow. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Dr. Hart.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Welcome everyone to our February Board of Education meeting. As Mr. Rizzo said, we're going to begin the superintendent's report this evening with department budget presentations. This evening, we have members of the administrative team from the curriculum department, our technology department, transportation department, pupil services, facilities, and Mr. Bohm will review our administrative and personnel section of our budget. This is the first of several public meetings where the board discusses the budget development process for, believe it or not, the 26-27 school year. I can't believe we're already talking about 26-27. So what happens tonight is each department discusses with the board their tentative plans for their budget for next year. After this meeting, the Board of Education and the administration waits for the governor to make her budget address and release state aid numbers to each individual school district. Because we have a new governor this year, that deadline may be extended. So we are unable to finalize our budget until state aid numbers are released. At that time, Mr. Bohm submits the budget to the county office for approval. The county office reviews the budget, provides feedback, if any, and then we move toward our final budget adoption at the end of April as well. So, like I mentioned, this is the first of several public budget presentations where the board and the administration will engage in the budget development process for next school year. So with that, I would like to introduce members of our curriculum department, Dr. Brown, our supervisor of humanities, and Ms. Pouch, our supervisor of math, science, and technology, to talk about the curriculum budget overview and some initiatives for next year. Board members, in your board portal online, you'll be able to follow along really easily. All of these documents that Ms. Pouch, Dr. Brown, and the other administrators will reference are in your agenda. You just click on each department. In there, there's a one-page overview where they're going to focus on their one-page overview, which talks about some budget initiatives for next year, and then the detailed budget report is also contained in your documents as well. If you have any questions, feel free to stop any of us and let us know. Dr. Brown.
Good evening. We are here representing the curriculum department. It's currently formed with 2 curriculum supervisor and 1 supervisor of special projects. There's an overall total department budget at the top of the menu, and then you can see that we have a reduction in our budget of about $18,000 this year. So the money included in this budget is partially new initiatives and recurring items. So we have 2 new initiatives this year, one of them being TCI and VISTA renewals. That is our middle school social studies program and our French textbooks. We also have UFly Foundations, which we are implementing in the K3 as their intervention program. And then we have additional reoccurring items that you see from year to year.
The reoccurring items that you'll see listed include curricular resources, money for curriculum writing over the summer, as well as professional development at a district level, ability level, as well as the supervisors. And this also includes our professional development program of teacher academies and the in-service day and parent academy facilitations. Is there any additional information we can provide for you?
So this is the board's opportunity to ask questions of the curriculum department on any topics related to curriculum, instruction, assessment, as well as some of those items like professional development that Ms. Couch mentioned.
I just want to make sure I understand the way this document is set up for
Go ahead.
everyone.
Yep.
When there's a year-over-year change in red, it means it's a reduction, or it's a reduction compared to last year,
Yes.
not a.
It's less than, yes.
Yep.
Red is,
Red is
usually
reduction, yeah. it's reduction. Yep.
thank you.
Okay, if there's no clarifications, next would be Mr. Jamelski, our IT coordinator.
Good evening, everyone. So this year, our technology budget will prioritize several key projects. As part of the referendum projects, we are focusing on the installation and update of interactive whiteboards for our elementary schools. We're excited for that. The current plan is to refresh the primary classrooms across all 3 elementary schools, with installations scheduled from the end of the school year through this summer. We're hoping to get through all 3 schools in that time frame. Additionally, we are beginning the initial project planning phases for the implementation of an upgraded intercom solution at our middle school. We plan to use E-rate funding to offset some of the cost of our network operation license for the maintenance of our core network, and that covers all network components. We are also planning for the final phase of our core network switch and wireless access point upgrades, which are tentatively scheduled for next summer as well. And this is also E-rate Category 2 eligible for district reimbursement. Our technology budget and priorities focus on achieving 2 main goals: maintaining high acceptable service levels and minimizing our risk tolerance. Those are the 2 general areas we try to focus on. Broken down more specifically, we have software licensing, which covers essential software and subscriptions. Infrastructure redundancy, new this year, we are looking to implement a backup to our firewall. This is something we'll be doing in-house at a relatively low cost, but will provide us some additional redundancy. Hardware updates, new teacher classroom laptops to fully support the functionality of the new interactive whiteboards at the elementary schools, and student devices, transitioning student Chromebooks and possible staff laptops to a more cost-effective Acer line. We're looking to transition to Acer, which likely will be able to provide us some more cost-effective alternatives. And I outlined some of the highlights of our budget, which is on the 2nd page. Feel free to look through that. Also, I just want to make a note, no impact to the budget that we're planning for, as I mentioned, the smart boards for the elementary schools, including teacher laptops, building intercoms, and then student books. all covered under the referendum or purchased with 25-26 year funds. Please, any questions? Great, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. I would like to introduce Ms. Rebecca Burns, Director of People Services, and Mr. Anthony Tumolo, Supervisor of Special Projects, People Services, and Professional Development.
All right, welcome. So for the People Services Department, our department consists of school health services, school-based counseling, English language services, child study team, special education, speech and language services, behavioral services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, Section 504, and preschool. So it is a large department, and as you can see, as far as the budget highlights, our change from last year is an increase of $129,000. Largely due to the cost differential between our out-of-district student placement. I kind of outlined that differential. Those certified tuition rates are provided to us. So those are things that our students are placed in those programs and it's provided. And so I just included the costs there for you. Some new initiatives from our department, Universal Design for Learning and our autism program. You'll see an increase in those budget line items in the budget. But I did also include just an overview sheet of both of those programs that I'll just quickly highlight some words in the program sheets. The Universal Design for Learning, for example, is a framework. It's not a curriculum. So thinking about building capacity to what we're already doing. So our current teachers are, they have their instructional materials from the curriculum supervisors. And this is just a way to think about lesson planning. So instead of thinking about lesson planning reactively to support students in special education, to increase our inclusion rates or our multilingual learners, to remove those barriers from the onset of planning is really the purpose of Universal Design for Learning. So again, it's just building capacity in that Tier 1 instruction in hopes to reduce our referral rates and also reduce our intervention services to students so they can be provided that instruction in that Tier 1 setting, so the general education classroom. The other one is just autism program. So one of the things that I'm hoping to do is strengthen our autism program by building universal assessments for our students that ultimately will identify student strengths based upon functional strengths. So thinking about functional language, learning, social, self-help. You've been supportive of the community-based instruction program that we have within our district. So that would be something that these students would identify goals through the EBLS assessment. That's one of our benchmark assessments I'm hoping to bring into our program that's really going to identify individual needs as it relates to that functional skill in those programs. So that is our autism program. The other are just recurring items that remain in the budget. And I just wanted to speak briefly, if when you look at the breakdown of the budget, as far as the large increases, we do have CBI, crisis prevention. So that is our restraint services and de-escalation services prior to putting hands on students, training our staff of what the most appropriate way and safe way for the staff and students. Two of our district behaviorists are trained trainers, so they turnkey that information to our staff. So biannually, we have to certify our BCBAs to become that trainer. So that is an increase in the related services in the budget. The other one related services is a Hunterdon County ESC paraprofessional. We have students that require a higher level of assistance in the classroom through a registered behavior technician in order to provide more explicit services for students in our autism program. And lastly, we have 3 district staff that are trained in level 1 Wilson. They are continuing to their level 2, which provides them access to small group Wilson. And at the conclusion of next year, all 3 of them will have had the highest level of training through Wilson. So that is a continuation of their training. other than that, Mr. Tumalo?
Sure. So I'm going to share a little bit about our counseling budget, just kind of review. These are recurrent items. So it focuses on professional development for our counselors, school supplies for them, materials that directly support student well-being and counseling services. So you'll see there's attendance for New Jersey School Counseling Association Conference, budgeting for department professional development and workshops, district SEL supplies, and then specific counseling supplies as well as materials. And just to emphasize that nothing's new, new cost is just recurring from last year. Questions?
I have a question related to the semi policy that is later on in the agenda, but are any of these line items reimbursed as part of that? Is that included in their assessment?
So the Pupil Services Department covers the services that are part of SEMI. So SEMI, for everyone's information, is Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid for students in our district that qualify for that. We provide services based on what those students need, and if those services are eligible for federal reimbursement, our staff and consultants submit for that online, and then we get federal money for that. So that's what happens through the SEMI program.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying, but I was curious if any of the budget items that you were describing would be eligible for this reimbursement.
Some of them would be, but we wouldn't get that reimbursement until after the fact.
Okay.
So some
this budget-
services are,
This budget reflects our total output, but not
correct,
necessarily.
yes.
I did have one question, and it's just more of a follow-up. When you presented the UDL at the EdTech, you talked about a 3-year phase program and so
Yes.
on. And maybe just share that with the rest of the board so they can understand how the program's going to work over the next 3 years.
Sure. So one of the, and again, so as I shared during the Ed Tech, I'm bringing together a committee, myself, Dr. Tumalo, and the 2 curriculum supervisors, and teachers that are volunteering to be on the committee, really looking at what our current practices are and what ways in which we can strengthen that. And one of the ways that we can strengthen that Tier 1 instruction is bringing in universal design for learning. Again, it just being a framework for supporting what we already have in district. And with any initiative, it's not a 1-year thing. It's over the course of multiple years, bringing in teachers that are on board, the early adopters that are really engaged in the work, and then turnkeying it to another cohort in year 2 and year 3. So when I put $36,000 into it, that would be over the course of 3 years if the committee recommends that implementation phase plan as suggested through CAST, which is the organization that runs the UDL training.
Question. Just question, just in general, as we invest in the autism programming, if there's opportunity to bring any of the students back in district, is that something I know you're always looking towards, but
Yeah.
is that potential for the future?
Yes, and I would also say that building, when I brought up the Hunterdon County ESC, that's also retaining the students that historically might have gone out of district. It's just starting to build that capacity in the program within district. The goal is always to keep students in district. And then also even to have neighboring districts consider Reddington as a tuition in school for schools that don't have an autism program.
To introduce Don Race to talk about facilities. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. You can see there, you see here, a proposed tentative budget for the 26-27 school year. The budget supports district day-to-day operations for custodial, maintenance, security, grounds, takes care of everything that we need to keep running for day-to-day operations. You see my budget total there, right? You see the overall change. Going down the line, you'll see these are some of our reoccurring costs that we've seen continued increases in year after year. The biggest one being our custodial cleaning services contract, which this time next year we're going back out to rebid for. Our security services, our wonderful SROs, our police officers, and our collaboration with the Department of The police department, you'll see that price there. Energy has, natural gas has been okay, but we've seen significant increases in electric across the boards. We're hoping that some of these new efficiencies we'll be putting in the next couple of years for the referendum will help that as well. And hopefully we can get the additional solar off the ground, which will definitely impact these numbers. We've seen really in the last year big increases in electric rates. And it's not so much usage, it's just electric rates are just through the roof. Trash and recycling is also a big, service. This time next year we'll be going up for bid with them again. We've seen increases in my part of the general liability insurance, well water management, water testings. Water testing compliance has gotten tougher these days. So there's more things we need to test for, the forever plastics and things like that we're talking about. And of course, custodial supplies and paper, and cleaning supplies, we've seen increases of those since COVID. It's been a small, steady increase, so it's getting more expensive to buy the supplies we need to use every day. Some of the things that's not funded by the local tax levy, in district, we always have a bunch of small scale maintenance projects. We've been stepping up these projects in-house, so we do not have to bring in vendors, which has really makes the budget. It really does. My guys have had some great training over the past couple of years, and they are just, those guys are tops. Classroom reallocation at Three Bridges for upcoming kindergarten, preschool. We'll be doing some work in there. That's funded through this year's budget. And of course, everything from our referendum projects in year one, which is being funded through the referendum budget. Questions? I'd like to introduce Ms. Marcy Cole, Supervisor of Transportation.
Hi, everybody. So you'll see my line items. My three biggest ones are fuel, the outsourced contracted routes for the students that go out of district, and aid in lieu reimbursement to parents for non-public students. Some of the no impact to our budget that was planned for. We do, for new drivers, we do in-house training for them to obtain their CDL. I coordinate with Flemington, Tewksbury, Hunterdon and Central, and the ESCs for transportation. We all try and help each other out, and it keeps costs down. We also, in the summertime, we do trips for Reddington Recreation during the summer for their summer rec program. And something that the drivers really like to do is we deliver the preschool meals to the preschoolers, to the daycare centers, the holiday gift delivery to the low-income families, and we have people that deliver produce once a week to the cafeterias at all the schools. That's about it. Any questions?
I have a question. I just want to make sure I'm reading the line item correctly, that last year under school bus supplies, that's our fuel costs, parts cost was $170,000, and we're budgeting now $277,000. It's a $100,000 increase. I just want to make sure that's our forecast for fuel costs going into
Yes.
this year.
Unfortunately, fuel is not one of the things that's going down. It just seems to be going up, and when we have to take buses out for repair, that's going up also.
All right, I just wanted clarity.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had a question. I actually wrote to Mr. Bohm, which he may answer for me, please. But usually we look at the fleet list when we're going through the transportation budget. So I just was curious because we generally budget for an additional or a bus each year, or if we can. So I was hoping that you could maybe speak to that in terms of what that looks like for us in terms of new buses.
You want to try first?
Sure. Usually when I ask for buses, we wait till April or May to the end of the school year to see how much money is left over. And if there's enough, then I'm a happy girl. But if not, then we make do with what we have.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for asking for that earlier. I got a chance to look at all the bus lists. And I'm just looking at 3 of them are from 2010, one from 2011. Some of them are old, and I think we try and replace them before year 20. So how does it work? So the older ones that are from 2010, are they still operational? Any issues? A lot of maintenance?
They are still operating. They're in rough shape, but they still operate. They don't look the best, but they'll start up when in any kind of weather. The state says we can keep them on the road for 20 years, but it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. All the salt and the brine that they use on the roads, and they just don't make things like they used to.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Mr. Ball, I'm sorry. Now I'd like to introduce you, Mr. Ball, our business administrator.
For you, those that don't know me, I'm Mr. Bohm. So I have the pleasure of talking about superintendent and business administrators departments. So our budget's flat year over year. We increased $475 if you're into details. Our budget's pretty standard stuff. It's general liability for the district. That actually is the highest cost in our budget for this specific department, which everyone is feeling at their home insurance, their auto insurance themselves. It's the same thing for the district. Those rates have gone up significantly over the past 2-3 years. Legal fees have been flat over the past 2 or 3 budget cycles. We do our best to try to keep our legal fees down and do things proactive to maintain that, so we don't get sued and we do the right thing. Also, we set an example for how the staff and the students in the community should operate. A lot of our stuff is software. Obviously, we have the audit fees, professional development for Dr. Hart and myself, but also for the board members is in our budget. Mandatory school boards dues by statute are in there, which represent a good amount. And then some minor stuff like supplies and advertising. The big thing that Mr. Rizza talked about is the big change with advertising. So we actually shrunk that in our budget this year because moving forward, because the Star Ledger and many other major newspapers stopped printing, the state changed the law so we no longer have to publish public notices in a physical newspaper. So our public notices moving forward will be on our website, and there'll be a state website that has every single district link in the state of New Jersey on it moving forward. That is effective March 1st. So if you want to keep up to date with the district, probably subscribe to our newsletters and look at the district website because that is where things will be moving forward. Some other things that don't impact the budget but are just we do in the business office, low-income assistance. So we partner with HSA. We also partner with social services in town to really try to help the community as much as possible. So we offer free meals, breakfast and lunch. We actually expanded because of Mr. Charleston's suggestion with the nurse to offer meals on half days. So we actually offer breakfast and lunch on half days, which is pretty unique in the area. We also give out backpacks with social services in town, clothing. We even help staff secure low-income housing in town if they're eligible. So, we try to coordinate our best to help out staff. We also try to work with our private providers for preschool to offer discounts for daycare. So hoping to, with retention recruitment, daycare is a very expensive endeavor. One of the other things to highlight is that with the PA program, the preschool program in town, you can join the district for free. Several years ago, we gave refunds with the state money. It's funded by the state, but right now it's free. So open enrollment, I believe, is next month. And if you have an age 3 or 4-year-old, register. We also do grant writing. So the board adopts a lot of grants to see Trees for Schools, which is sponsored by the NJEA as well as the state of Jersey. We've also gone and passed EV bus, some other major things to offset the local tax levy. I personally also do retirement planning. So if staff or need assistance with that, I meet with them one-on-one, show them how to retire or to financial plan for retirement, walk them through the pension process, answer questions, and then encourage them obviously to meet with the state one-on-one. For our cafeteria services, we access a lot of federal money. So we encourage families to sign up for low-income assistance because if they qualify, they get free lunch and free breakfast. So our goal is to get as many students on that program that qualify because it just helps the family. Also, because of that money, we generate a lot of profit in our cafeteria funds, which are not part of the tax levy. And we try to do special events for kids, as well as outdoor seating and some outdoor furniture through those funds that don't impact the tax levy. We offer summer enrichment with Mrs. Ogden runs that, which the staff graciously come back in the summer to dedicate their time to continue education for the students. I talked about preschool and the private providers. We have 4 private providers, White House Prep, Berry Patch, Stanton Learning Center, and Global Pioneer. The 4 we partner with. Next year we will have 17 preschool classrooms. So we are the largest that I'm aware of in Harnett County, and we service our entire universe. So that means if you have a child in town that's 3 and 4 years old, there's no wait list. You can get into our program and there's no lottery. So that's something great that we were able to offer and that the board graciously voted upon a couple of years ago, and Dr. Hart was able to implement with the supervisors. And lastly, referendum. So the public passed the referendum vote in November. We've started on those projects. They're publicly available on the referendum website for you to go through and track the progress. And there's a couple on tonight's meeting for a vote. So that's central administration. Any questions? Turning over to the other overall budget. So personnel and benefits, I'm going to do this at a high level because we actually have this in executive session. Remember that speaking about specific staff members requires a rice notice. We haven't riced anyone this evening. So when we talk about personnel in executive session and in public, we're doing more broad strokes than. So if you have any questions, try to be high level. So there's enormous pressure on the budget. You're seeing districts through newspapers going negative. They're going under. You see Montclair, you see Perth Amboy, you see Hackensack. You're going to see more because the pressure on the budgets is really from healthcare. Healthcare increases are averaging over 20%. If you're in the state health plan right now, your increase was effective January. They could not budget for that increase. So you will see districts in financial trouble in May and June that are in the state plan. We are not in the state plan. The board has been in a private plan for 15 years with lower rates. So our impact is really next school year. So that's our challenge for next year's budget is our health increase, which is $7 million, is about to go up to 20 to 23%, which as a whole represents a tax levy increase of 4.5% by itself. You add in salaries of 3% nominal increases. You have the pressure of general liability insurance, your auto, utilities that everyone feels at home. We have the same increases here. So what we've been trying to do over the past 2 months is constrain everything to try to be cognizant of the taxpayers. And hopefully when we get to March and we present to the public, we will have a very minor tax increase that allows us to continue the great programming for students and supports for the staff, while also trying to mitigate these large impacts that are coming externally. So Dr. Hart and I have been working hard. finance committee has been working hard. I think when we get to the March presentation, I think the public will be pleasantly surprised on how low we're gonna be able to keep taxes while still, providing for all the programming that currently exists. Any general questions? All right, well, I'll throw it back over to Dr. Hart on that high note.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Welcome.
Thanks for the good news. I will mention a couple of things. The board will notice that the presentations done by the supervisors, everybody, thank you for being here tonight, really reflect a couple of things. Certainly our, first and foremost, our priority to our students in providing great programming next year, as well as what we've done this year. And two, to expand to the degree we can the services provided to students. You saw pupil services talk about UDL, looking to improve services in the autism program as well, looking for innovative or different curricular programs to enhance student interventions. We maintain a high level of encores or electives at the middle school, which is a priority for us. So we'll remain committed to that, combined with what Jason said, which is some challenges that we're facing for the budget for next year, which are the same challenges that every district is facing and the same challenges that we face in our homes with increases to our own healthcare and utility costs and everything like that in our homes. So we're going to continue to strive for excellence, and I think you saw that through our budgets. I'll mention we didn't talk much about preschool because the preschool budget doesn't come out until March, maybe April, I want to say. We have 17 classrooms, which can hold a maximum capacity of about 250 students. Registration is open. We have an online registration system that's open currently. As of the latest numbers I've received, we still have 20 open spots, but at the same time, it's only 20 open spots. We have about 230 kids already registered for our preschool program next year. It is our goal. It is 90% of our universe, which is 266. We've reached that target. Our hope and our goal, and I believe we can achieve it, is to service every 3 and 4-year-old in a free preschool program for next year. And I think we're on our way. So we'll have more details about the preschool budget later in the spring. I'll open up to any general questions from the board. Okay. If there are no questions on the budget, I will introduce Dr. Brown and Ms. Pouch to come back to the podium and ask Larry to bring up our presentation for tonight. This is our mid-year diagnostic review.
Good evening again. This is our iReady diagnostic results. It includes our mid-year growth reports, but also we'll start out with NJSLA data. So this is a two-way comparison. So previously at the beginning of the year, you get the actual scores. Now we'll have comparison between our peer groups and similar districts that look like us.
You might have to get closer, Stacy.
It went.
Go ahead, go, I'm telling you, go closer and it like reconnects, I think. See?
So
I can't
this-
explain it, it just happens.
We don't have to understand, just ours, that's good enough. These are our comparison groups. So this is our ELA, math, and science trends compared to peer groups that have the same socioeconomic status as Reddington. So we have good news here. As you can see in the text, it shows that we have outperformed our socioeconomically ranked peers in both ELA, math, and science. And then there's an extra note for our last year's 5th grade classrooms and our Algebra 1 classrooms, that they also had exceptionally high scores when compared to peers of the same grade within our socioeconomic.
I can't help you here now. That's usually it.
So I need a battery. This is our ELA achievement, specifically comparing Reddington, which is on the left, with our free and reduced lunch peer group, Hunterdon County Schools itself, and then at the end, the state. Now, it also includes the DFG, which is one over from the right. What's different about the DFG is it is not our current peer group. It is our peer group from 20 years ago. The DFG was built off of the socioeconomic status of the districts, but it hasn't been updated since the early 2000s. So what is currently used to show socioeconomic status is the free and reduced lunch ranking, which you can see right next to the Reddington scores. This shows our scores for the past 5 years, starting in 2018-19, and then continuing to last year's NJSLA in the 24-25 school year. So you can see that we are outperforming our current peer groups in total, and we are just 4 points off of that DFG, which would be no longer considered a valid comparison. Is there anything that I can add to this information for you?
Yeah, just can you comment on, if I'm interpreting this correctly, Reddington on the left looks like we're trending down while the comparator groups are trending up. I'd just love to hear your thoughts on why that is.
It's not an ideal picture. However, it's important to remember a couple of facts. One, this is a 3-year spread and we've lost 4 percentage points. So 4 percentage points over 3 years is not a large change, although it is something that we looked into. It does not appear to be a district-wide concern. We were able to target it to specific areas every single year, and each year it was a different area that caused a dip in the score. So it's something that we're going to discuss in more detail when we meet with the tech later this month.
Thank you.
Anything else? Then I will hand you over to Sarah for math, and I will stand over here and I will do this for you.
Excellent, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So good evening, everyone. Looking here at the math achievement for NJSLA, looking at our free and reduced lunch peers, Hunterdon County, again, as Dr. Brown mentioned, the DFG, which is socioeconomic, but very much updated, and then the state as well. So in our original presentation, we pretty much only had Reddington compared to the state. So now we have some more information showing that that Reddington is outperforming districts in all areas except for the DFG, which again is 20 years outdated. So looking at the socioeconomic, which is based on free and reduced lunch, that's a more accurate read on similar socioeconomic schools. We're also doing very well in comparison to Hunterdon County and the state. Everyone is on an upward trend, and we're just pleased to see that Reddington all of those upward trends. So the remainder of the presentation is on iReady growth data. Is there any questions for NJSLA that I can answer? So this slide gives us our iReady diagnostic mid-year scores with our reading results to the left and math on the right. The graph is presented into 4 quadrants where we, based on performance and growth. We can see that for Reddington, we have all grades and all subject areas were in the high performance, high growth quadrant for the mid-year assessment, with the exception of 6th grade, who was in high performance for math, but didn't break into the high growth. So we would obviously like to see everyone with high growth and high performance, but high performance is a good place to be. You might remember from last year's presentation that 7th grade had very similar results to this last year. And by the end of the year, they had made their full growth. We had nice results on NJSLA, and they had, met their expectations. And when you look at the math students as 8th graders, you can see that the 7th graders who were low growth last year are now in the high growth area. So focusing in on what those students need, we have a very similar plan that what we implemented for 7th grade math last year. We're looking at implementing some of those same strategies with 6th grade this year, anticipating the same good results by the end of the year. The next slide goes into a little bit more detail on what do you do with students who show low growth and high performance. So we've already begun working with the 6th grade math teachers, looking for what similar actions can we take, making sure that teachers are closely looking at the results of individual students and seeing where does each individual student land in growth and performance, so that we can see that grade level come up overall. So we'll certainly, in addition to be looking at individual students and where they fell within that graph, making sure that students are provided targeted instruction that's going to promote growth and engagement for all students. Where 6th grade is the focus because they didn't meet that growth goal, we're certainly using those same implementation strategies in all grade levels to continue to ensure that all students are continuing to make growth and have those nice high performance rates. Now we're going to take a look at each grade level individually. So any additional information on?
Just ask one question. How is growth defined or measured when you say low growth, high performance? Like, what's the correlation? And how do you say this person's a low growth or high growth? Like, how do you measure it?
So the diagnostic is the assessment tool that we use to determine that. And when the students take the diagnostic, the goal is to have a student or class or grade level median of 50% at mid-year. The program determines what is deemed appropriate growth for the full year. So at mid-year, we're looking for halfway. So at the end of the year, we're looking for 100% growth, meaning the students have made all the growth they need to move through an entire grade level. So the program really analyzes the questions and provides us with that data. And it's based on we're looking for the median versus a percentage, because we would have such outliers of very, very high and very, very low. Looking at the median gives us a more realistic midpoint. The rest of the slides are the details for each individual grade. So each grade level has either met or exceeded the typical growth with a 50 to 60% median for this point in the year, and they have all shown improved placement. The grade level results to the right in the green is the percentage of students who have performed within their grade level expectations. In the parentheses underneath, it can show where that starting percentage began. So for instance, for kindergarten and math with meeting or above grade level, you can see it in parentheses underneath, it says from 12%, and that students at mid or above grade level has increased to 48% at mid-year. So the parentheses give you the starting point from the beginning of the year, whereas the graph with the dark green, light green, yellow, and so on shows you the current mid-year placement. To the left is that typical growth, which again, we're looking for each grade level to have a median of about 50 to 60%, depending on whether they took the assessment in early February early January or late January. So kindergarten's been up there for a while. We'll switch to first. Again, you can see in first grade, we have students exceeding their typical growth, which also is an indication of gaps being closed. When the majority of students are exceeding their typical growth, they're meeting what we call their stretch growth, and that's where you begin to close gaps for students who might be struggling. To the right, we have our current placements, all of which have improved, with the number of students within the grade level increasing and the number of students below grade level decreasing. Second grade also performed very well and had nice high growth as well as good placement results. Third grade, continues that trend. They were the first grade level to go above 100%, which is always welcoming to see. Fourth grade.
Fourth grade is special because if you look at their reading growth and their current placement distribution, the fourth graders this year came in at 63% below grade level. And they are currently at mid-year with 66% of their students on or above grade level. So they made a huge amount of progress in just half a year's
Fifth grade, again, within that 50% growth and again, improved placement from the beginning of the year assessment. Looking at sixth grade, you can see this was the grade level that did not meet that 50% growth that we were looking for, but they were performing quite well with 69% of the students within the grade level expectations. We would just like to see that growth go up to make sure that we meet the 100% by the end of the year. And seventh grade, as well as eighth grade. And this was the group for math that had very similar mid-year scores as the current sixth grade. As seventh graders, they hadn't quite met that mid-year point, but finished the year strong. And then again, as eighth graders are showing that they're making the growth needed to maintain grade level performance. And finally, our testing calendar. Unfortunately, unavoidably, we've had some additional assessments this year. The state mandated the fall field tests, so that was an additional testing window that we needed to implement. The 50 of our eighth graders will be participating in the federal NAEP test, which is also, again, required, and that will be happening next week. And then for our regular testing calendar, we have NJSLA coming up in the spring. However, it is now NJSLA-A because it's been changed to an adaptive test, so it will be our first time administering a new assessment. And we also have our DLM for our students who will not be participating in NJSLA, as well as the access assessment for ELLs. Any other information we can provide?
First of all, well, I'm so happy about fourth grade results. That was really great to see, just because I know we were looking at that from the end of last year. And so I'm very happy to see tremendous progress in that. My question actually for Dr. Brown, for the eighth graders for reading, that the students who are 3 or more grade levels behind seems to be higher than what I remember. I just didn't know if you had any insight into that number.
They generally speaking, as they get higher into the grade levels, you can see them start to climb. So like fourth grade here, and then that gap widens. Mostly because you go from learning to read to reading to learn, and the content in a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classroom can be much more complicated than the type of phonics that you would see in a first grade classroom. And if you're not able to read proficiently in decoding, then that further impedes your progress. So we service those students in intervention. Some of them are in special services or have 504, so that doesn't delineate that here. It's just all into one bundle. So to really see if that is a concern, we have to pull out which students are functioning, currently in grade level classrooms, which ones have special services, and then we have to compare it to last year. I don't remember it being very different, but I certainly can look back at last year's scores, and then we can talk about that next time.
I didn't remember I didn't have a chance to go back and look. And then I also couldn't remember when the standards had changed over. So then I was wondering if maybe it was part of
The
the programming.
standards change was 2 years ago.
Okay, so they've had a full year in.
So we would need to look at like this class last year and see their 7th grade scores to see if they had that same kind of gap. Like you can see here, these 7th grade students they have a little bit of a dip. You can see that the 6th grade is at 100% proficiency with their annual typical growth already, and then we have 7th, and then we have 8th.
that seventh grade group looked very similar when they were in sixth grade. So this is just them continuing on their journey. They're growing, they're just not growing at the same rate as other grade levels. This is the path that they're currently on, and we're using our services to help them. That may be the same type of situation there, where that may just have a larger group of students that need specialized assistance. Anything else?
I did have a question. When you presented at the end of last year, one of the items was the iReady scores in June were a little lower because of conflicts, and I'm not sure why. I think it was
Eighth grade.
Eighth grade, exactly. Is there a plan to address that? Is it still an issue that you think for this year coming up?
This is similar to the growth that we had for eighth graders last year. There's some things that we can't control. There's special events. There's the mindset of an eighth grader going on to high school. So we've done some things to try and offset that. We've tried to talk to the students about the importance of the assessments and the impact that it has on their programming now and in the future. The teachers are presenting the diagnostic as a serious assessment and trying to help them understand the purpose of it. We are trying to focus on instruction for as long as possible. However, the breaks in instruction due to testing from the state, field testing, does not help this particular issue. So we are keeping an eye on it. That happened one time. I can't honestly remember in the 10 years that I'm here another time that happened. So right now we are also looking to make sure that it's a trend or not a trend. So if it happens 2 years in a row, then we would have to put an action plan in place to make sure it doesn't happen a third. But right now we are preemptively trying to avoid it, and then also looking to see if it creates a trend or it was just an outlier. We did get information from parents that students were purposefully not taking the assessment seriously at the end of last year, and that they have skewed results. Anything else?
I just want to say, I noticed that there's an end total of how many students took the test, who was eligible, and we've got almost every single student.
We try really hard.
Really impressed. Thank you. And I think that really is reflected in this data, that it helps to have a really great representation in school and students.
Thank you. The teachers take it very seriously. They try very hard to get all the students in a timely fashion, and we appreciate all their work. Anything else?
Thank you, Sarah and Stacy. Are there any other questions related to the mid-year diagnostic results for me or for supervisors before we move on with our agenda? I'll just mention that I've done walkthroughs throughout the buildings, and in every building, I've seen principals and teams of teachers having mid-year diagnostic data conversations. They're planning instruction for students based off of the results that they received. They're having team meetings about it. The supervisors, principals, and I have all done additional training with iReady and Linkit. So we have the data, and teachers, staff, principals are creating action plans and building goals to do our best to close gaps between now and the end of the school year. So this is a great path that we're on. We need to maybe adjust our path in certain instances, or continue on the path in other instances. So the staff and the principals and supervisors are all using the data actively and currently to make the best instructional decisions for our students. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is public comments. It's for any items that are action items on the agenda. We have a timer that will be set up for 3 minutes for speaking. If you decide to come up and speak, please state your name and which town you're from, and write it down on the attendance sheet when you go up to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Scott Cohen. I'm from Raritan Township. Former almost 20-year educator in public schools in New Jersey and former administrator in the Hunterdon County School District. I'm here tonight to address Policy 2535. I'm deeply concerned about this policy and regulation by the Reddington Township Board of Ed that undermines both the professional judgment of school librarians who entrust your superintendent to hire the staff that meet the needs for the district, and the protections guaranteed under New Jersey's Freedom to Read Act. New Jersey's Freedom to Read law was enacted to protect students' access to diverse education and age-appropriate materials, and to affirm the professional authority of licensed school librarians. This law is intended to prevent censorship and ensure challenges to materials follow clear, transparent, and lawful processes. From discussion at the board public meetings, the goal of the language you propose to add to this policy and regulation is clear: to circumvent the Freedom to Read Act by micromanaging the library selection process and pre-banning books before they're even published or purchased. The school board must follow the law when writing its policies, not disguise censorship with prior review or vague restrictions on sensitive content. We must protect our marginalized student populations. If you look at our staff and you look at our district, staff doesn't reflect our student changing and evolution diversity in our district. They need materials that reflect who they are and where they come from. The vague language around sensitive content, which is not defined in your policy, places district libraries in an unattainable position. It is essentially a recipe for silent censorship. We want the board, if they're going to move forward with this, to be transparent and share the books that are being put forward for review. Rather than risk confrontations with their employer, librarians, especially those without tenure, may be tempted to avoid purchase of books on any number of topics that current or future board members deem sensitive according to their personal worldview. Even librarians courageous enough to propose the purchase of such materials may be overruled by an ever-changing cast of board members who lack the collection, development, training, expertise, and experience of the district's highly qualified certified librarians. The proposed library policy and regulations run counter to both the spirit and the letter of the Freedom to Read law. I urge you to revise the policy by deleting the language that you have around sensitive content. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Amy Barrett, and I'm from Highbridge. I'm a retired teacher and a member of Hunterdon County NAACP's Education Committee. I'm here tonight because I too am deeply concerned that the proposed library material policy and regulation 2535 subverts the intent of the Freedom to Read law. The board has added language that micromanages library staff in selecting and purchasing books. The language added to your policy suggests that library media specialists do not have the professional training to determine what's developmentally appropriate without the assistance of the board. The language added to your regulation 2535 is even more problematic, and I'm going to quote from the regulation. The following procedures shall be implemented regarding the selection of library materials that may contain sensitive content. If a library staff member identifies the purchase of material that may contain sensitive content prior to presenting the material to the superintendent or designee, the staff member shall present the material to a review panel consisting of the building principal, supervisor of humanities, and another librarian. The panel's review process may include presentation of the material to the Ed Tech Committee of the Board of Education for further review. End quote. Why is this language a problem? Requiring a school librarian to present potentially sensitive content to a review board before acquiring new library materials undermines one of the core principles of the Freedom to Read law, namely that school library media specialists are professionally trained to select developmentally appropriate school library materials. In addition, the phrase sensitive content is vague and could lead to silent censorship by discouraging librarians, especially those without tenure, from purchasing books on many contemporary topics, including sex education, LGBTQ people, race, immigration, and climate change. Those with the most to lose in this scenario are the district's students, whose knowledge about the realities of the world will be constrained to conform to the preferred view of the dominant board members. I urge this board to pass a version of Policy and Regulation 2535 that removes your added language and fully aligns with the freedom to read law. Thank you for listening.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Charniak, and I am an 18-year resident of Readingham Township. Both of my kids attended the schools, including this one. I come here with a cautionary tale as I stand here opposing amending language of Policy 2535. My family survived Nazis, and I survived oppressive communist regime in Poland. Censorship is very near and dear to my heart, as communists love to keep their people in the dark. Is that what we're doing here? In Poland, we had what was called a censorship office that controlled books, press, and entertainment. Are we creating a censorship office here? We were forbidden to learn about certain parts of our history, like the Russian massacre of 22,000 people, Polish people, officers, and intellectuals. We could not learn other cultures and forbidden to learn anything opposing our government. And of course, there were never anything about sexuality. Censors removed sentences and paragraphs, often softening the text. Libraries were systematically purged, and authors were forced to write communist propaganda. Is that what we're heading? But I'm here also to highlight censorship in another country, Nazi Germany. In 1933, the book burnings began. It was initially done by university students, but eventually carried out by other groups. This was not done on behest of the government, but by German citizens who enthusiastically embraced the Nazi ideology. Whose ideology are we embracing here? The books that were purged were written by Jews, criticized the war, or were pro-leftist movement. Well, that sounds familiar. The Germans saw this as a renewal of German nationalism. They were demanded that teachers be screened to ensure that their thinking was in line with the German spirit. Many of the authors had either had their citizenship revoked, escaped the country, or were killed in the concentration camps. We are going to be screening people here too. In conclusion, the Nazi censorship campaign was seen as a triumph of their worldview over competing ideas. Well, we are here because you want to suppress competing ideas. Lastly, to the librarian, don't give into the authoritarian bullshit tactics. Censorship belongs in an authoritarian regimes and not here in America. I'm not going to sugarcoat my last sentence, and I want you to fucking look at me in the face. Because I come from a different experience. And to the MAGA members of this committee, someday you will too have a starring role in the history books and will be compared to the Nazis and the communist censors of the past. I will not stand as my beloved America falls into the hands of fascist wannabes. Thank you.
Tough act to follow. Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Bluefield, Readingham Township. Not thrilled to be here. I'm talking about 2535 regulation and policy to find out that we're hiring people that we have no faith in, assuming these are our librarians. I'm not thrilled that we are going against all the state law, and that means that presumably we're going to have to defend this,
and I assume that all of you are going to be defending that with our tax dollars, my tax dollars. Listening to Mr. Bohm's report regarding the stress on the budget, I do not know. Some people are asking, what books are we going to ban? If we're paying for all these attorneys to defend ourselves, what are we cutting? Because insurance is going up, fuel is going up, electricity is going up. All of these things are putting strain on our budget. What are we cutting? Are we cutting the autism program? That sounded like a really good thing. What are we cutting? So can the board provide a list of what, in order, we have to cut to make sure this policy works so that we can defend ourselves against the state of New Jersey? Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone online?
We had some emails. Actually, there's just one. Wow now, John. There's an emoji with a frown, number one, and it says preach. I'll get to emails, you said. Yeah, I'm reading those.
So we received 2 emails earlier today being asked to be read aloud at the board meeting. Our policy is if we receive, we received 2 emails earlier today. I actually received a lot, and I'll talk about that in a little bit earlier. The 2 people specifically asked to have a comment read aloud at the meeting because we wouldn't be able to attend. And our policy is if we receive those emails by noon of the day of the meeting, we'll read them aloud. That's being done by our communication policy chair, Ellen. So she's going to read 2 emails that we received earlier today.
The first email is from a Catherine DeLuca. Hello, my name is Catherine DeLuca and I'm a Reddington Township resident requesting my comments to be read out loud at tonight's Board of Ed meeting and documented as a public comment. I am strongly opposed to language incorporated into library materials policy resolution 2535, which undermines New Jersey's Freedom to Read Act. Implementing a requirement for review board screening introduces an unneeded bureaucratic layer to processes that literary media specialists already have the qualifications to perform. Deliberate convolution is not a responsible use of resident tax dollars, not only by diverting funding for our children, but also by exposing our municipality to entanglement in lawsuits by undermining state law. Literary media specialists are trained professionals that have the necessary background to determine developmentally appropriate content. The credentials of the proposed review board are unknown, but I find it unlikely that anyone has undergone the same depth of training as our librarians. Sensitive content is not explicitly defined, and as such materials may be subjected to review board biases and censorship that may not reflect those of the community. Though I do not have school-aged children, I am of the opinion that education is the foundation of a functional society and a strong community, and am adamantly opposed to any action that compromises this, including those done under the veneer of misguided protection. Literacy should be encouraged, and materials that students can engage with, connect to, reflect upon, and have conversations about is crucial to developing the skill sets needed to take them into adulthood. Libraries provide a safe refuge to do these things through books and other curated media for preparation of existence in a world that is anything but. I commend our libraries and librarians for their commitment to this mission, and further reflect that I would have had less opportunity and more uncertainty in my adult years without access to literary material in my school libraries to develop my worldview. Thank you, Catherine DeLuca, Reddington Township, District 6. The second email we have is from Renee Rao. Hello, Board of Education members, select true parental voice. Please leave the library material policy the way it is intended to be and refrain from adding language that will be out of the line with the Freedom to Read Act. I am a Reddington resident, but unfortunately unable to attend the Tuesday night board meeting. I would like my comment read out loud during public comments portion of the meeting if possible. Thank you, Renee Rao.
Thank you, Evelyn. Before I close that public comments, anyone else would like to speak? Okay. So the way we do our comments is we generally don't respond to individual comments unless there's a specific question asked. We will, when we go to section 6, we talk about the policies and we get into a second read, we are going to open it up for discussion for board members. So in a little bit, when we get to that one section, the board will, if they choose, make comments at that time. So at this point, I am going to close down the first public closing comment section and move to the next item. Okay. We received 2 correspondences at the time of the agenda was made. We received other ones since then, and we'll have them reflected in next month's agenda. Those 2 correspondences are on file with the board secretary. We're now going to move into board actions. The first one is the approval of our administrators' reports. We have one item, actually 2 items, item 101 through 102. Can I have a motion followed by a second?
I'll move, Ellen.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Mrs. Cassidy,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Pieros,
Yes.
Mrs. Rad,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. Pinto,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Our next item is approval of minutes. We have items 201 through 202. Can I have a motion followed by a second?
I'll move, Ellen.
So any discussion items? And Mr. Bowman?
Mrs. Cassidy,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Pieros,
Yes.
Mrs. Rad,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. Pinto,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Our next item is finance and facilities. Michelle will have a committee report to read out. But prior to doing that, we have 13 items, 301 through 313. Can I have a motion followed by a second?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you, Michelle.
The Finance Committee met on Wednesday, January 28th. The first topic was the 2026 through 2027 budget. The committee reviewed the 3-month timeline of key milestones for the budget process, which is planned to conclude in March. The initial proposal takes into consideration staffing, educational, and operational needs across the district. The committee reviewed the healthcare and enrollment adjustments that enable taxes to be raised above the 2% cap. 2 key unknowns for the budget are the number of retirements expected, as well as state aid, both of which may provide a cost offset to the budget. More information on these 2 inputs will be available in the March timeframe, just prior to finalizing the budget. An overview of projected class sizes, staffing needs, and the importance of balancing educational needs with fiscal responsibility were a key focus of the discussion. The committee also reviewed the contribution of the district tax liability to the overall tax burden. An update on summer 2026 capital projects was provided, including the 3 Bridges preschool bathroom project and the referendum. Capital reserves of $600,000 are lower than ideal, and the board discussed the importance of closely monitoring spend initiatives. The second topic was architect fees. The committee discussed the proposed architect fees and was pleased with the business administrator's update on the lower negotiated fee. To initiate referendum projects in July of this year, which is preferred to minimize disruption to education while students are in school, upfront funding is needed to support pre-work. Given the low capital reserves, the district cannot fund the pre-work directly. Therefore, the architect will develop a solution to begin work without delay. Solar proposal and backup option. This project remains open, however, the July deadline is at risk if further delays are encountered. The committee agreed the project is important to pursue in order to achieve future savings for utility bills and asked the business administrator to continue to work with Easy Energy to advance this project. Bus route efficiencies. The committee discussed that mid-year transportation changes are discouraged due to disruption to families. Transportation will be a topic at a future meeting due to time constraints during the committee meeting, which prioritized the budget discussion. The bill list was available for committee members to review, and the next meeting is planned for Thursday, March 5th.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to open up the comments, but I did have one question to Mr. Bowman on the solar information. Can you get an update on that? I know like what's going on with the deadlines and the new vendor and so on like that. Is there anything you could discuss in public?
So the board has established a specific committee for solar several years ago because of the tremendous success we had with solar 9 years ago. So we have an existing solar array that generates about 40% of our electricity. And we have seen almost no degradation in the solar panels over the past 9 years and paid a lower rate than what we currently pay for utilities. That grid expires in 6 years, and then we would generate free electricity for 10 years that's under warranty. So we won't have to maintain the panels, but we'll get 10 years of free electricity, which will lower our bills about 40%. So the goal has been to expand from 40% to 85%, which is the statutory limit on how much you can generate locally as a power provider. So we've been exploring that and working with Easy Energy, who installed our last PPA for solar, and also is locally in town. The representative actually lives right around the corner. So we have been working with that company for the past 2 years, and there's been some financing issues because of what's going on at the federal level, also inflationary costs. So they are on their third financier right now, which is Select, which is a huge company out of Canada that is funded through the taxpayer system up in Canada. So that company has given us some draft proposals to move forward with, which are a flat utility rate for 15 years. I hope to have that in writing for the Finance Committee on March 5th, in hopes that if that goes well, we would potentially adopt on March 10th before the deadline in July. The deadline in July basically gives solar companies 30% off their installation. So if a project is $2 million, that's $600,000. So that deadline is the most critically important. If that falls through, there are 2 vendors that were willing to step in quickly. So really, the Finance Committee has its work cut out for it next meeting.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention briefly and thank the administration, facilities, and the finance committee for working so quickly on the referendum that we have started we're in the process of purchasing the whiteboards and playground equipment. This is going to have a massive impact on our students in our community very quickly, and I just want to get so impressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, just want to hear the roll call vote.
Mrs. Cassidy,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Fierros,
Yes.
Mrs. Rad,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Awesome.
Our next committee's report is from our Education Technology Committee. We have 6 items to move, 401 through 406. Can I have a motion and then followed by a second?
I'll move.
Last time we met, it was prior to the board meeting, but we didn't get a chance to read out the committee report. So I'm going to read out the committee report on behalf of Paolo, because Paolo was unable to attend. Paolo is the chair at the EdTech. So this is our committee report from our previous meeting. The committee met on January 16th. The members were Paolo, Linda, myself, and Justina. The administrative staff that attended was Dr. Hart, Jason Bohm, Rebecca Burns, Dr. Stacy Brown, Katie DeQuisto, Sarah Pouch, Dr. Anthony Tumolo, and Jim Belsky. The first thing we want to mention is congratulations to Dr. Brown on her selection to serve on the Statewide Assessment Advisory Committee. The committee includes NJDOE staff, KBM Assessments, Inc., and other practitioners. The committee will be responsible for English language arts content development for New Jersey statewide assessments. Congratulations, Dr. Brown. The next thing we reviewed were curriculum and program initiatives for 26-27 school year. We reviewed dates and deliverables for the 5-year curriculum renewal cycle plan. The current school year includes implementation of the new curriculum for 6 to 8 math, 6 to 8 health, 4 to 5 science, K to 3 STEM. For the next school year, no new curriculum is planned to be, but items will be piloted and evaluated. Next item we discussed was, and this was touched on a little earlier during the budget presentation, was the UFLI Foundations and the SIPS program. The SIPS stands for Systematic Instruction in Phonological Awareness, phonics sight words. The programs are designed to teach foundational reading skills and can be used for core instruction in the primary grades. The district is piloting these programs for implementation and intervention only. The district is proposing to implement universal design for learning, which was mentioned earlier, this model into the multi-tiered system of support. UDL has been successfully implemented in 2 neighboring districts, and Remington is looking to introduce it through its 3-year phased rollout starting next year. Each year of the phased rollout is approximately $36,000, and UDL will be discussed at the February BOE meeting, just today, in the proposal presentation from the administration. Next item we discussed was the multiple technology projects that were presented to the committee. Some of the items, such as network hardware, software, and access points, are eligible for E-rate subsidies, which are up to 40% of the cost. Other items, such as smart boards and laptops that support smart boards, are part of the bond referendum. And once again, that was discussed earlier in the presentation. Preschool classroom projections. These numbers are going to be off a little bit when I get to them because Dr. Hart gave a recent update, but this is what it was as of earlier. So the first thing we have is the district applied for was approved for 17 pre-K classes, which is 1 more than the current year. The proposed centers are Three Bridges Elementary School for 1 classroom, White House Elementary School for 2 classrooms, Stanton Learning Center for 2 classrooms, Berry Patch for 5 classrooms. This is a change and that is 1 additional classroom than currently. White House Prep, 2 classrooms. This is a change and that is 2 less classrooms than they're currently enrolled. Global Pioneer Academy, 5 classrooms. This is 2 additional classrooms from the current year. These numbers are a little off, as Dr. Hart said, but when we had the meeting, current enrollment was 110 returning students and 95 newly enrolled students, leaving 50 positions open for continued enrollment. And district students with an IEP, as of today, that is 20 open spots. The district drafted an informational letter with details on preschool program that will be sent to the parents of the district. We talked about testing administration timelines. A review of completed testing and future testing timelines were presented to the committee. The administration will present the results of the mid-year iReady testing to the board at the February meeting. We did. The presentation will include an overview of the testing the district undergoes, including timelines and key aspects of the test. Some completed items were the October-September board review of access for ELLs. In October, board review of NJS SLA scores, end of year iReady. And in November, we had the comparison data of HC PSAT data provided to the EdTech committee. Agenda items that were on the agenda are STEM Next Community and Nature Grant, fundraisers, Temple University study, and the Judy Wilson strategic planning contract, and those are all part of the actually last month's agenda because this happened before that. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, February 23rd at 8:30 a.m. Any discussion on those items? Okay. Roll call.
Ms. Cassidy,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Mentor,
Yes.
Mr. Pieros,
Yes.
Ms. Rad,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. DePinto,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Our next item is our personnel. We have 8 items to move, 501 through 508. Can I have a motion and a second on that?
Motion, I'll second.
Okay. Justina, do you have a report?
We do. The committee met on January 23rd. We discussed staffing updates and noted that we are currently fully staffed. There are no staffing changes at RMS, HBS, White House, or TDS, and no changes in the district or preschool. There is one paraprofessional opening. Transportation staffing remains unchanged. Additionally, there are 4 leave-related openings that we currently are working to fill. Enrollment projections for 26-27. We discussed, as registration is currently open, we currently have approximately 1,600 students in pre-K through 8th grade. Dr. Hart recommended closely monitoring enrollment at TBS due to the new development on the Three Bridges side. We discussed staffing projections also for the 26-27 year. We reviewed enrollment numbers and the staffing projections for that year. The climate survey results were shared with the committee. Principals and Dr. Hart are reviewing the results with individual staff members and school climate teams to gain more insight. We had a preschool update, and White House Prep has been notified that they will run 2 classrooms next year. Dr. Hart also informed the board that the governor signed a bill regarding NJFLA, which changes thresholds and benefits, and we discussed a personnel matter. And we set our next meeting for February 20th at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Ms. Cassidy,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Pieros,
Yes.
Ms. Rad,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. DePinto,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
The next agenda item is policy communication. We have 2 items to move, 601 through 602. Can I get a motion in a second?
I'll move, Ellen.
Second. Any discussion?
I guess I had a question. You mentioned earlier that you were gonna discuss emails that were sent to the
Oh, yeah.
board. Is that what you're gonna do in this section or in a different?
I can bring it up. Okay. Did you have any other comments or?
I wanted to hear what you had to say about the emails.
Okay. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, and as Beth also just mentioned now, the Board of Education receives emails on a regular basis on different agenda items. We receive approximately, I would say, somewhere over 100 to 125 emails on the Freedom to Read Act. What had happened was there was a website called saveschoollibrarians.org/Reddington, New Jersey, which posted information about the Freedom to Read Act with a draft email with a link to us. And based on that, we received, like I said, probably, let's say 125 emails or so. In addition, we probably, in those emails, essentially were saying text. I'll actually read that text because it's a public website, so you guys are aware of what was sent. And then we received probably maybe half a dozen to 10 unique emails. So most of them were the same exact email sent from this organization. So the site had an overview, a link to tap into, explained kind of what was said earlier about the Freedom to Read Act. And this was the draft email, so that you guys are aware of the 100 and some odd emails that came through. It was, "Dear members of the Reddington Board of Education, I am writing as a concerned community member regarding the newly introduced policy and regulation 2535 related to school library materials. New Jersey's Freedom to Read law was designed to protect students' access to educational, age-appropriate materials and to affirm the professional judgment of licensed school librarians. I am concerned that requiring materials to be flagged and reviewed prior to purchase, especially using undefined terms such as sensitive content, risks undermining both the spirit and the letter of that law. I respectfully urge the board to ensure policy 2535 fully aligns with New Jersey's Freedom to Read law. Please focus on policy and governance, not individual books and materials." And then there's a spot to put your name and your town. So that was the letter we received. Like I said, probably over 100 of those exact terms. So I don't know if that's what you want to add on, speak or.
I mean, I guess my comments would be that this is our second read, so at this point, if it passes tonight, it goes into our policy books. I will say that at our last meeting during first read, we had 3 board members who were against some of the language in it. And this board did not entertain adjusting or editing in any way. And now here we are, and we received over 100 emails. But I will say, I was noticing where these people writing in, the public, where they lived. And I noticed a lot of Readington addresses. And so I feel like, yes, it was this form letter that was online, but it was our residents, our voters, who put us in these positions. And so I feel like this is our chance to listen to our constituents and to change course if needed. We put this policy language out there, and it's clearly having a reaction. I would like to see us go back to committee with it and edit the language. We can't edit it tonight and pass it because that would be changing the substantive piece of the policy. So it would have to go back to a first read anyway. So I would like to make a motion to send it back to the policy committee and revise the language to pull out in the policy portion the sensitive content pieces, and then in the regulation to pull out the review panel and ed tech committee review portions. That will put us in line with what other districts have passed. I saw Hillsborough had last week a lot of discussion around the same policy, and they passed what I would call like the clean version of what Strauss Esme recommended to us, which is what I was saying initially. Let's pass the same language as everyone else, so we do not have lawsuits, and so that we do follow the law exactly as needed. So that's what I would like to see.
Okay. So just going. Okay, so it's just something procedural. So there's different things. We actually have motions that are on the table. Our main motion, which were 601, 602. A board member has asked for an amended motion, or actually a new motion. So we'll take that up separately. Beth could have asked for a couple of different things. She could have asked for it to be tabled, which would have been one thing, but she did not. She asked for it to send it back to the policy committee. So I am going to reiterate what you said, Beth, make sure we capture it correctly. And then we'll see if we get a second, and then we'll open up the debate specifically on your motion, and then we'll go back to the main motion as needed. So correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, your motion is to take, let me just read the agenda. Item 601, policy 2535 and regulation 2535 to remove from today's agenda and move sent back to the policy committee.
Policy regulation 2535, yes.
Just the regulation and policy?
Policy and regulation.
Yes, okay. Does anyone want to do a second?
Second.
Okay. So since we have a new motion, once again, this is just on that. It's not on the main motion. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I would like to comment that I feel like, last meeting where we were discussing our perspectives, felt a little isolated, that I was reading the policy and regulation on my own, and I was presenting my opinion on it. Reading 150, that's more what I'm counting, email messages from people who stopped what they were doing and read through the policy and had comments on it. It reiterates that what I was seeing in the policy and regulation was overstepping, and that the sensitive content, while well-intentioned when we were trying to suggest an approach, is not equivalent to developmentally appropriate, which is what is in the law. It goes a lot further. And then the regulation instruction doesn't say if the librarian cannot make the decision on her own if the sensitive content is justified according to the literary value, scientific value, the merit that we had indicated. No, it says everything that has sensitive content. I don't know about anybody here, but have you read the I Survived series, right? Everyone who's gone through this district has gone through those books. Every single one is stressful. There is life and death, and it is sensitive, but it's what interests our students, and it's what gets them reading. And I just want to support sending this back, to look back at the content, and I urge us to go closer to the law and supply a policy and a regulation that fits the spirit of the law.
Any other comments specifically related to sending that?
I actually found the opposite. I thought there was a small percentage of those emails that came from Reddington. So I don't know, maybe I missed some. But I do have a statement that I would like to read in respect to this policy. So this policy is not about banning books or limiting access to literature. It is about ensuring that books with sensitive content are not made available to students in grades K through 8 whose developmental needs and maturity levels must be taken into account. This policy is meant to provide clear guidance and consistency, not censorship. By setting defined standards, it removes unnecessary pressure from our librarians who should not be placed in the difficult position of having to make subjective judgment calls on their own. This policy gives them support, clarity, and protection while allowing them to continue encouraging a love of reading. I strongly support children reading and being exposed to a wide range of ideas, stories, and perspectives. Reading is essential to learning, imagination, and personal growth. However, it is equally important that the materials provided are age appropriate and align with what is suitable for young students. Our goal is balance, promoting literacy and curiosity while also being responsible board members of what is placed in front of children. This policy helps ensure that students can enjoy reading in a way that is enriching, safe, and appropriate for their stage of development.
Just a comment about my support to bring it back to committee. If you remember last meeting, I did not vote for the regulation specifically. Having read the emails that came through and listening to the comments today, it reaffirms that decision. And for me, it actually opened the aperture that the concerns I initially had were more narrow. And now I have clarity that the concerns are even broader after listening to the comments and both hearing from the emails. So I appreciate everyone sharing that so that we can listen to you.
Okay. Anyone else have comments specifically about returning it back to the policy committee?
I would like to ask something.
Sure.
I understand that there's some discussion about going back to the policy committee, but I just want to be clear on the goal too, because I don't, this policy has been out by Strauss Esme since December. We are where we are today. We have the feedback that I believe we have in front of us. I don't want to return to committee, to come out of committee, to then be in the same position again. I just want to be a pragmatist about this and decide, can we articulate a board goal to go back to, and I know it's not part of your motion, Beth, but to go back to the committee, because I just don't want to be back here again. I just want to see if can we come to a consensus of what the goal of the committee will be, so that we can be in a position where we can move a policy forward.
So I'm just going to echo what Dr. Hart said. We met policy committee in December. January, I think twice, right? I think, or at least one meeting in January. There's multiple, we met as a board, second time, multiple read-ins. At this point, I'm not sure sending it back to committee will have changes. So my personal view, I'm going to vote to not send it back to committee, to move forward with it. And then when we talk about the actual Freedom to Read Act, I'll have some comments on that as well. But I would my view is I'm going to vote to have it actually be voted on tonight, so that we can either move forward or not move forward with a yes or no. But that's just my vote and how I'm going to vote. So I don't know if anyone else has any comments before we do a roll call.
I have an additional comment.
I
don't.
No, I'm reading through the wording in the policy. And the sentence that always stood out to me for the purpose of it was materials with significant educational value that may also touch upon sensitive topics must prioritize the educational, literary, artistic, and scientific merit over any adverse content. Those are the rare books that we are referring to where the balance may be skewed, where there is, hey, this book has educational value, however, I'm not sure if that educational value is more than this adverse content. So those are it's rare books. It's not every sensitive book like you're referencing. So my interpretation and understanding of it is that the educational value must outweigh any of that like adverse, sensitive, sexually explicit material. And those are the books that would be presented to EdTech, if there are any, and I would expect that it would be a very rare occasion. And that's where this was to help the librarian in those moments. And then just to change the language, I believe last time I had asked if we should make changes to the regulation and add any clarifying language or anything, and the answer was no at the last meeting. So I believe that would be the same answer as today.
Did you get any feedback from any board members on making changes after the meeting?
No.
Okay. Michelle?
Yeah, I wanted to just share with the board a conversation, David, that you and I had around unintended consequences. And I think that it's relevant here because as I listen to all of my fellow board members, and I'll refer to that as the majority, those that are advocating for this policy to be endorsed, what I'm hearing is a positive intent. And I think what I'm also hearing from the comments in the public and from the emails is that there's the potential for a negative unintended consequence because of the way the regulation is worded and some of the language in the policy. And so my ask of all of you as board members is to reflect on the feedback that we now have, because it's been quite a bit. If we get 1 or 2 emails a month, that's a lot. This is a significant outlier of communication telling us that we are creating an unintended consequence because of the way that we have worded something. And I am asking us to go back and reflect on that and then come forward with our best shot. I think it's not prudent to push something through, given you have 3 board members that are being fairly vocal about it, and you have people in the district that need to implement this, and they are saying that it is not supportive of them. So that is my ask of each of you, to take this back and reflect on the feedback so that we avoid an unintended consequence.
Michelle, and if that's the purpose, right, of going back to committee, I'm okay with that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that we don't go back. I just want to make sure that we go back with some sort of reflective purpose if we're going back to committee, just to make sure that we don't create an unintended consequence, spin our wheels, or otherwise get stuck anymore. That's all. So if that is a purpose, which I think I hear you articulating, that we at least reflect and see if there's a consequence to what's happening here, I'm okay with that. I just want to have some direction. So I mean, I think we can be responsive to the community, but at the same time do it with purpose and a goal. Sorry, Pam.
Oh, it's okay. I wanted to read that sentence again that Ms. Barrett commented on in the regulation 2535. If a library staff member identifies the purchase of material that may contain sensitive content prior to presenting it to the superintendent, they would present it to a panel. It says purchase of material that may contain sensitive content, not sensitive content that they are weighing to determine the educational value of. It is saying anything with sensitive content. It is books on the Holocaust, and it is books about war, and it is books with, set 100 years ago with a completely different environment where kids are treated differently and we speak to people differently. It is saying everything with sensitive content, which is, again, is not a defined term coming from the law.
Doesn't it follow the policy?
Pardon me?
Doesn't it follow the policy though? Policy, and then this is the how. This is the law, this is the how.
Yeah, policy is the law. So the way policies and regulations work, it's policy is usually the what, the law. The regulation is the administrative how the administration implements.
Right, it's mandating that everything with sensitive content before the assessment of is a good thing. developmentally appropriate and has educational value, is being made by this committee that the panel that the librarian has to escalate to.
So I was gonna add some comments, actually, I don't we actually vote on it, but, I'll just add my comments now since it's about, should it go back to committee or not?
We can't hear you. Speak up,
Okay,
please.
sorry, sometimes it speaks a little low, thank you. The, one thing I just want to mention is that one of the comments was spirit of the law, and actually is it within the law as well? That was in the email template that I read, some of the comments were made as well verbally, as well, I think the email that Ellen read earlier. So one of the things that the policy says is the Board of Education, this is from the law, the Board of Education, in consultation with school library staff members, shall have discretion in selecting, purchasing, or acquiring library material for inclusion in the school library. And then it lists the policy and the law, and it says nothing in this law or policy shall be construed to require the Board of Education to purchase or otherwise acquire library material for a school library. So the law and the policy that we were given, that the board of, I guess the Department of Education drafted through Strauss-Esme, says that the board does have the legal right on the curation. The policy also in law goes through different things as well, like removing books and so on, but it is within there that the board, nothing requires the Board of Education to purchase or otherwise require. And that's really not a change really, but it's just in the policy. And then one thing I want to bring up is the regulation as well, if we talk about the regulation a little bit. Okay. And the one thing, we've read it a few times, but so I'm not going to repeat it. I think it was just read a few minutes ago, so I'm not going to repeat what was just read. But one thing to note is that, and I mentioned this last meeting, is that you have a book that's flagged as sensitive content. Okay? It's up to the librarian, him or herself, to decide if it's sensitive content or not. Right now, the librarian is doing that on a regular basis. They're curating, they're using their expertise, all their knowledge to decide what books to bring in. So there really is no change on that. If for some reason they think, okay, this is content that may be sensitive, I can ask a colleague. They're doing that right now, I would imagine. There's a curation process. What the regulation does is just take something that's not written, that's informal, and push it into a formal thing that those, rather than informal colleagues, this is review committee, which is a fellow librarian, the school principal, and the supervisor of humanities. It's just formalized and something that's probably happening already. They review that, and if for some reason that group decides that maybe, it is sensitive content, they bring it to the superintendent. That's already happening. Every book that gets purchased goes to the superintendent for review already. So that's already occurring. So everything we discussed is really not a change per se outside of processes. The librarians already has full ability to decide this and to raise it to her colleagues or not, to raise it to the principal, to raise it to the superintendent if needed. It's already occurring today. And one thing that changes, it says the panel review process may, not shall, may include presentation to the Ed Tech committee. And the superintendent is on every committee, so he's on that as well. So that could happen today as well now. So a book could come through, it could be raised, it could be brought to the Ed Tech committee. There's no reason why it couldn't happen at the moment. It just hasn't, because there hasn't been any books that have occurred. So everything we're doing, it's not really a change, to be honest with you. It's just saying what's happening, documented in a regulation, and have it go forward. And because it is, I believe, in spirit of the law, based on the section of the policy that I read. So that's the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
The only other comment I would make is to the point of the goal of bringing it back to committee. The concerns that were expressed by the emails we received, those were the concerns that we had while in committee. Those were the ones that we looked at and questioned and made sure that we were okay. So we've already done the work. So that's just what I have to say.
I think one of the things that's important for a healthy board is to have a good relationship with the district staff. I haven't heard a single staff member get up to the podium and express their support for what we are doing here. That is notable and it's concerning. And I want to ask one option, because Ellen, I think what you're saying is we're out of ideas. We've tried our best. And I think an option would be, could we have them look at the language? Can they adjust it? My concern is that you're saying that we're not changing anything. Why are we spending all this time talking about it then? We're obviously changing something. We're putting something in place. You are documenting a way to create uncertainty for the librarian, who then is going to pump it up to the principal, the library specialist, and whoever the other panel member is, who are also going to be uncomfortable. And they're going to then escalate it to the superintendent. And who does he work for? He works for this board. So I'm sorry, but I'm so concerned about this. How could we create tension between the board and the staff? That's not healthy for us. Yes, we have to make hard decisions. I know we're in these seats for a reason. This isn't one that I think makes sense. And we have put Reddington on the map not because of our green initiatives, not because of our phenomenal test scores. We put Reddington on the map because we're causing tension. That's not who we are. I really would ask this board, we can do better. Take another shot. Don't push it through.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, maybe Dr. Hart, you can add on to this, that you did reach out to staff back, I think in December, right? And you did circulate it to them and get their input as well, right?
Yeah, I circulated through the librarians several times and brought their input, their feedback to the committee, and the ideas they had, the thoughts they had, as well as the concerns that they shared. I think that's fair. So.
I just want to mention, yes, Michelle, like you stated, maybe there hasn't been a staff member that came up here in support of it, but I also haven't heard what the concern is either. What is the concern from the staff by putting this policy in place?
Is it not reflected in the emails that came through and through the feedback that Dr. Hart shared?
Well, the email is a pretty copy and paste, and like I said, those were not, I'm talking about, you were mentioning staff members, so I'm talking about staff members.
Staff members are worried about their decision rights being eroded.
I haven't heard from a staff member.
I think I thought the committee, I'm not a member of the committee, but I thought that maybe that's a great next step, is can we bring that feedback back to the committee to re-examine it, or to the full board?
Can I remind everyone that the union president spoke in the last meeting? And told us that we are impinging on their professional duties. I mean, the way that we have the regulation written, we have a librarian who is going before a board committee to present a potential book to purchase before their supervisor, like, it's unclear. Is the superintendent, I mean, he sits on that committee, but we don't have staff members attending. We have administrators that attend the committee meetings, but to have a librarian go before a committee, and who knows, at some point maybe a non-tenured librarian to go before a board committee to present a book to potentially purchase. There's so many blurred lines in that whole scenario that it's uncomfortable. It's not what we should be doing as a board. It is not our role, and we were told that at our last meeting.
And I don't necessarily know if it would be the librarian for the committee. The librarian would raise it to the panel if, to Ellen's point, a book actually gets raised to that point. The librarian herself would have to raise the book. It would then have to be raised to a committee of her peers and her supervisor or principal. then would have to go to the superintendent before it goes to the.
I don't believe it says that. Maybe that's not clear. the way
It's,
that regulation
it's specifically how it's written in the regulation, the steps I was going. So, and at that point, who represents it at the committee? Dr. Hart represents the administration. He could request people to come in or not. It's really up to the administration. Anyone that's outside of a board member that shows up at the committee is at the discretion of the superintendent, no one else. So Dr. Hart could represent it. He could ask the librarian, ask the review committee. It's not up to the board. But that being said, it may be few and far between. I know everyone clapped when they said what really changed, but it's not really changing too much. The librarian is curating, the librarian's deciding if it's sensitive, librarian's sending it to her peers, who would then have to make the decision, and the superintendent has to make the decision, and it may go before the ed tech committee. That's the way the regulation's written.
I know it's been read a few times, but I just want to restate the language because I think it matters. Because regardless of what we say around this table, we may not be here when this needs to be enacted. And so what's catching my eye, and again, I implore us to take this back to change this. It specifically says, if a library staff member identifies the purchase of material that may contain sensitive content, I'm going to skip the next phrase, the staff member shall present the material to a review panel, and it goes on. The fact that it doesn't say can choose to or may present, it says shall. That is directive. If you were going to follow this to the letter of the law, that is everything. And what I'm hearing very consistently, and I appreciate, is both of you are saying they can choose. It's not everything. And I just want to point out, there's a disconnect between how I'm hearing you both articulate it and the words that are written on the page. That's a great reason to go back and think about the unintended consequences and at least align the written words with what I'm hearing you say at a bare minimum.
Correct, Michelle. I think that the first word is if the library member. So you have shall that starts with if. The librarian, it all starts with the librarian. If the librarian identifies it, that's what is before the word shall. That's where the librarian gets agency. That's where it's still in the professional discretion of the librarian because it starts with the word if the librarian identifies. So that's why I'm okay with this because we're not taking responsibility. We're not overstepping it, in my opinion, because it starts with the librarian if the librarian decides. That's why I think that's coincides with word shall.
And then the may is the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, and we still have discussion on the main motion too, so I'm going to take any other discussion on whether it should go back to committee before I ask Mr. Bowen to take a roll call vote on that specific motion.
I just have one
Christine?
last question. If it does go back to committee, I'm just curious what language you'd feel comfortable with. Or do you want the policy to read as is?
I have proposals. I know that I mentioned that I wanted to streamline it a bit, and I really wanted the feedback from the staff members who are impacted by it, and we did get it that they were kind of not happy. And they gave us a list of dozens of scenarios that would be sensitive content, right? And some of them were getting to the point of ridiculousness. It's outside the scope of developmentally appropriate. I would like, what we are doing in the policy and what is consistent with this, we're providing professional development and software and tools to aid the library or librarians in curating materials. We provide that to them. That is totally true. We've created a new we've created a new definition around sensitive content. I think that should go, or it should simply be, we provide tools for professional development in order to determine if material is developmentally appropriate. That's in line with what the law says, that's in line with what we're doing, that's in line with what we're presenting. And then in the regulation, it needs to be around developmentally appropriate questions, right? Not every sensitive content. It's directing every single book with sensitive content back to a panel and then up to the board. That, if you identify sensitive material, you shall present it. It is not if you identify sensitive material that you determine to be educationally valid.
But the policy guides that portion of the education advisor, that sends the guidance and this.
It's in the wrong order. It needs to say that if it's determined to be outside of the normal developmentally appropriate guidelines, that's when it would be raised. Right, where the software says this is intended for grades 9 through 12, but it's the 8th Harry Potter book or whatever. Sorry, there's 7. And then we can make the judgment call up. I'm just afraid that realistically, we will not be able to manage the amount of content coming through here if the librarians follow this letter of regulation.
Okay, so I think part you bring up, I don't know if we've read the policy portion. We've read the regulation quite a few times over the last half hour, so I'm going to just read the part that Pam mentioned. I read the part about the law, right, saying that the board has the ability to do it. This is the section that we actually added in. This is the new portion of the policy. It's just one paragraph I'm going to read. And it basically states, to that end, the Board of Education will provide the school library staff member with the tools and professional development to ensure materials are developmentally appropriate for pre-K students served. Materials with significant educational value that may also touch upon sensitive topics must prioritize educational, literary, artistic, and scientific merit over adverse content. All materials selected shall be consistent with student interests, the district curriculum, and developmentally appropriate for the grade level served. The language is intended to guide future selections. Removal of any material is guided by Regulation 2535. So it does go through and echo the spirit of 2535, the rest of it, where it talks about professional development materials are developmentally appropriate, significant educational value, prioritize educational, literary, and artistic and scientific merit over adverse content. So the policy covers that. And then the regulation is how it's implemented, which is where the review committee comes in. So that's why I think it does cover what you're saying, Pam, in my view. Any other comments? Okay, so now just to reiterate where we're at from a procedural perspective, we are not voting on at this moment to accept the policy or not. Is specifically the motion is, do we send regulation and policy 2535 back to committee? If we vote yes, it goes back to committee. If we vote no, it stays on the agenda and we'll have more discussion on it, and then we'll vote either to implement it or not. So this is just to vote going back to committee or not. So just make everyone's clear on that. Okay. So Mr. Bohm, on that, can we have a roll call?
Mrs. Cassidy.
Yes, send it back to committee.
Mrs. Fiore.
Yes.
Mrs. Menser.
Yes.
Mr. Pieros.
No.
Mrs. Rad.
No, and can I just say that, because what you're saying is that the people that are on the policy committee, it's gonna be the same thing. The same people are gonna vote the same way, because I don't think anything's gonna change.
Ms. Ryan.
No.
Ms. DePinto.
No.
Mr. Rizzo.
No.
Doesn't carry.
Okay. So now we're back to the original motion, half hour or so ago. 601. I'm going to read it so everyone's aware, so we stay focused. It is 601 and 602. 601 has multiple policies for adoption through second read. The two that we talked about were 2535 regulation and policy, as well as other ones. So based on that, I'm going to open it up for discussion on should we adopt items in 601 as for policy through second read, as well as 602 if we want to the district calendar. So any comments on the main motion? Okay, no comments, Mr. Bone. We have a roll call vote on items 601 to 602.
Ms. Cassidy.
I'm gonna vote no to policy 2535 and regulation 2535, and yes to committee.
Ms. Fiore.
No on policy 2535 and regulation 2535, yes to everything else.
Ms. Menzer.
No on policy 2535, no on the regulation 2535, yes on everything else.
Mr. Pieros.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. DePinto.
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Shane.
Our next item on the agenda is unfinished business. I'm not sure if we have anyone have unfinished business. No. Okay. Our next item is new business from the board. We have two items. The first is we want to recognize Justina. She is she has our NJSBA certified board member certification. Congratulations, Justina.
Justina, when you get your plaque, let us know. So we can.
Speaking of picture, we never took our board picture.
I know, and Paulo's absent tonight too, so I wasn't even bothered.
Okay.
Hoping for next time.
Next item we have is additional March meeting dates. Dr. Hart kind of alluded to this a little earlier about with the new governor and new timelines and deadlines for state funding, which are affecting our board. So I'm going to Dr. Hart if I'm going to provide detail on that.
Our regular board meeting in March is scheduled for March 10th. In years past, that's been the typical deadline that we've approved our tentative budget. After that board meeting, it gives Jason the ability to submit it to the county for state approval. Because we have a new governor and a new administration, the budget address is actually moved to March 10th for the governor, which means state aid numbers wouldn't come out until March 12th, which is after the deadline. We're unable to submit a tentative budget by resolution and to the county without our state aid numbers, we won't have them. So what I emailed the board is my proposal is to keep the March 10th board meeting as our regular board meeting and just have a special meeting to do the tentative budget presentation. The two dates I suggested were March 23rd and 31st, primarily because the school calendar is already developed and there's plays and concerts and events at the schools, and I don't want that to conflict with the board meetings. These are two proposed dates that I selected that don't have any additional dates on the calendar, school calendar. So I want to bring it up to the board, see if there's a preference. We need a quorum. I would love to have everyone, all 9 here, because the budget is important. So the date that most people could be here or be available, either one of those dates were available. Is there a preference, is the question.
23rd or 31st?
23rd or 31st.
So from a process perspective, do we have to decide now or would it be okay if we emailed you after the meeting?
Yeah, I'm okay with an email. That's fine. Jason, do we just need to advertise? It's after March 1st. We would just need to advertise whatever date we select. I don't know if you have a particular time that would be helpful either. I mean, we could also, because it's a special meeting, we can make it 5. In case there's somebody's event, we could make it 6 or do our typical 7. So.
I mean, I'll just throw out there, not available on the 31st, so.
You're a finance chair, so it's kind of important for you to be there.
It's an international trip that I can't reschedule, so.
Okay, so is everyone okay with the 23rd then? Good, March?
Good time.
What time?
What time do you all want it? Do you do it earlier or later? Which one's better? No preference. Rich?
The board meeting I go to, I don't know, anytime to go through man, I think.
Anytime on the 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the 23rd, okay. All right, so I guess 23rd.
Okay, the 23rd, but I don't think I could be here for 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't do
Later, but so we can do our typical 7, 6.
I'd rather do 6, I just can't do 5.
Okay.
6, okay. Is there a preference, 6 or 7?
It's going to be dedicated, I mean, there may be other business that comes up, but it's going to be dedicated for the budget.
Really, that's the purpose of it, yeah, because we'll still put typical agenda items on the 10th.
Like if we have a personal item that we have to vote on or something like that, it'll be there, but it's mainly for the budget. Okay.
David, I wanted to add one more thing to
Yes.
new business. There was a Garden State Coalition of Schools meeting on January 21st, where two individuals came to discuss school finances and state aid. They talked about the school funding in New Jersey and how the formula is not keeping up with the costs of the districts, and they talked about the SFRA School Funding Reform Act. So I won't go into much detail, but there are approaches that are being considered right now to maybe standardize or make it more fair with the state portion of funding.
Thank you. And one other item before we move on to the next item, new business from the board. We created a new ad hoc committee for strategic planning. Myself, Rich, Linda, and Pam are on it. We're meeting for the first time on February 19th. So we will do a readout at our next board meeting on that. So it's just letting you guys know that the committee has been formed and we're meeting on February 19th to discuss the strategic plan for the first time. Okay. Any other items before I move to public comments? All right. The next item is public comments. Similar to last time, 3 minutes to speak. If you have comments, please come to the podium, put your name and address, write it down. Different from the first time, it's not only on items related to the agenda, it could be items on or off the agenda. So at this moment, I will open it up for public comments if anyone wishes to speak.
Already on here, so I'm not going to sign in. Really disappointing on the outcome of the vote. I don't have inside information into your district per se on what's been happening behind closed doors with your staff and your faculty at this district, but based on what I hear in the background and based on some of the commentary that there was input from librarians and other staff members who have expressed concerns about the policy, and you're not listening to that, that's extremely damaging in credibility to your superintendent, who is hired by you to have the power and be enabled to do things that that superintendent needs to do, which key is hiring. The superintendent has the skills and abilities that you've entrusted to hire staff who can make these decisions. And the comment about the fact that you're having so much discussion about it is very revealing. So I would hope that for the sake of your community who's expressed deep concerns about this policy, that you are fully transparent with them whenever a book comes up that goes through this process, that the numbers, just like HIB reports go out at different district Board of Ed meetings, that the book report comes out and is shared with the public on how many books, what the titles were of the books, and the rationale for the decision on why that book was chosen not to go through or was censored. Thank you.
My name is Betty Stankovich. I live in White House Station. My kids all grew up here, went to school here. They've since moved on. And I am also very disappointed in the vote. I just feel that it runs the risk of leading to censorship. I don't know who on the board has been trained, as our librarians have been trained, to be able to make these decisions. And the way it's worded, it's a lot of interpretation. I think like any book could be sensitive. You talk a book about someone dying is sensitive. Like how do you define what's sensitive? And so I am extremely disappointed in this vote, and I hope it doesn't come back to haunt us later. Thank you.
Since you, look at you, look at you, look at you. I want to know why your eyes are down when I speak. Did something spring a nerve? I lived in something that none of you lived.
The people that I came from were beaten and killed because of censorship. But some of you just don't give a shit about this. Just shit about this. You supposedly study and learn history, but none of you learned history. Because I fucking lived it. My grandmother, as a teenager, worked underground to hunt Nazis down. That's where I come from. I come from concentration camp being 2 hours away from my childhood home. I lived in neighborhoods where there were still shots in the walls. That's where I come from. Does it make you uncomfortable? Does it? It should. People there are crosses in Poland standing where Solidarity movement took out dozens and dozens of lives with machine guns. That's what I come from. And this little trickle that you think that you are tweaking the fucking words, you think you're tweaking the words. But in reality, you are slowly trickling into authoritarianism. That's how it began everywhere. That's how it began everywhere. And all of you that voted for this fucking thing that said that you don't want this, you don't want to change the language, I hope you wind up in the heaps of ashes of history for what you fucking do, because you have no fucking idea what you just did. I care about my kids went to this school. They went to all these schools. I live in Reddington Township, District 4. I hope you all go home and will not be able to sleep. Because eventually you will find out how authoritarians creeps into every aspect of your fucking life. And eventually, do you know this poem that eventually they came from me?
You're gonna just one moment.
No.
Actually, yeah, shall I?
No.
Shall I
Eventually they will
I
come
just
from
wanna
all
just-
of you.
I just want to just read one thing from our policy because I let the first few go. But the presiding officer, which is me, may interrupt or warn a participant when a statement, question, or inquiry is abusive, obscene, or defamatory.
Blah, blah, blah.
I think you said obscene. Now I interrupt you.
Blah,
You still
blah,
have
blah.
about a few seconds. So
Blah, blah, blah. You know what? You can't hear the truth. You can't handle the truth. Oh, famous quote. You can't handle the truth.
it's just the obscenity. We're in a public
No.
setting. People do watch.
No. Everybody is adults here.
Not everyone watching is that's why
I
we have
know.
in policy.
I hope all of you are watching out there on YouTube. This is what our future is. This is what our future is.
Okay, thank you for your comments. All right, anyone else? Hold on one second. Did you speak up? Okay, go ahead.
Everybody else who got that.
Oh, yeah, someone, you can go
Already?
first, that's fine. There's a race to the podium.
Extremely brief, Amy Barrett again. I am disappointed as well, but not surprised. You have a reputation as probably the most extremist board in Hardin County. But I just want to let you know that Senator Zwicker, who is the sponsor of the Freedom to Read law, has already sent a letter to the Commissioner of Education in New Jersey about this policy and regulation, and that Michael Gottesman of the New Jersey Public Education Coalition has sent a letter to the Attorney General's office about this policy regulation. So this might not be the end. Thank you.
Tom Curtis, White House Station. First of all, I want to apologize to the entire board for having to put up with what you just had to put up with. That's totally inappropriate. I find it kind of odd. So you make a small rule related to what can go in the school library, and people are, their hair is on fire. We have these rules for our movies. We have these rules on cable. We have these rules for public radio and TV. Why is it so inappropriate to have a very small rule for a freaking middle school library? I don't understand why people are so incensed about this. And to think that every librarian, through whatever professional skills they have, is not influenced by their own worldview is naive. That's all I have to say. Again, I apologize. You didn't go through. Shoot.
My name is Meryl Vance. I am the RTA president, in case I missed it last time when I got up and spoke a couple of weeks ago. And I am also a long-standing staff member in this district. And I can say, I have never attended a board meeting where I have been more disappointed in my 23 years in this district. And I am sad for myself, and I am sad for the community, and I am sad for these wonderful staff members that are sitting back here. Because no matter what you think, what you did tonight is implied to your staff that you don't trust them. And I would have hoped that you would have at least considered having more conversation on the topic. And to those of you who asked for that, we hear you and we appreciate you. But again, here I am, up here as a staff member and as the union president. So yes, there is staff that did get up and speak. And again, you made the implication that you don't trust us. It's a sad day for this district.
Hello, my name is Harlan Andrew. I also live in Highbridge, and I'm also a member of the 100 NAACP's Education Committee. I always have one comment and an important question. The comment is that Regulation 2535 you passed tonight is not a recipe for consistent results. And here's the question. What does sensitive content mean? What does it mean to each of you? Is there even a consensus among the board members who voted for 2535 as to what sensitive content is? Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody?
Not as tough an act to follow. So I have one question, because I don't think I was clear what happened before, but it seems like before the board didn't have a say in which books the librarians would choose, and now the board, who theoretically has the ability to cut tenure, hire and fire people, now has a say. So while if a librarian brings something forth, is it possible for a board member to say, hey, I want you to do this, not saying you'll get fired if you don't, I'm just saying, you should bring this forth, and then escalate. So that, I think, seems to be the difference in my head, which is now there isn't so much an if as when. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, no one's online. So generally, we don't make comments when people make comments, but I am gonna make one comment to something Mr. Cohen asked. He asked about if a book is brought up, will it be made known? If a book does actually make it to the Ed Tech committee, going through all the process before then, it'll be on the Ed Tech committee minutes. So definitely you'll see that when we do a readout, so that will happen. If it makes it to the policy review committee and not to the Ed Tech, the board's really not going to know about that, and that would be up to the superintendent to handle how we would want to do that. So it hasn't happened yet, so I'm sure we'll come up with a way of how to handle that through the regulation or through how he implements it. But if it does make it to the Ed Tech, it'll be an Ed Tech committee. If it never makes it to the board, the board won't even know about it, and the superintendent handles that through his policy review. So there we go. And I don't think there's any other questions on that. I am going to move to go to executive session. I am going to make the motion to adopt the following resolution. Resolve to adjourn to executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law to discuss 2 HIBs, a legal matter, and personal and benefits budget for approximately 45 minutes, at which time the board expects to return to public session where action shall be taken. The matters discussed will be made public if and when circumstances requiring confidentiality no longer exist. However, it is not presently known when such circumstances will exist. I have made the move. Can I have a second? Second, can I have a roll call vote?
Ms. Gessie,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Minzer,
Yes.
Mr. Pieros,
Yes.
Mrs. Rad,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Pinto,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Just one other, there is a chance that we shall take action after the meeting. So if you do stay around roughly 45 minutes or more, we will open the meeting back up. Just to let you know.